This is Noah Pred for Native Instruments, and I'm excited to show you two excellent vintage model digital reverb devices, RC24 and RC48. All the samples we'll be using are from Manifest Audio, available on sounds.com, and that percussion is really dry. So I'm going to navigate to the Native Instruments section of the audio units in the plugins browser and drop an instance of RC24 directly on that track. Now it's all the way wet, so I'll switch it to mix mode so I can control the dry-wet blend myself. And by default, it's on the small hall algorithm. I can switch to large hall or room, and RC24 has the room algorithm, unlike RC48. So here's a spectrum view, and when I turn the real-time audio analysis off, we can't see the result of the reverb. Enabling quantization noise gives me a more faithful emulation of the reverb models is based on. And as I switch to either of the hall models, you'll notice a dark and bright option for the reverb color, emphasizing the high end with the bright model and keeping it a little more rich and full with less high end in the dark model, neither of which are available with the room algorithm. So looking at the spectrum, we can see the resulting reverb decay in the frequency and time domain. There are 6 sliders that govern the main parameters of RC24, with the first left one being pre-delay, and depth controlling the perceived distance of the listener from the sound. So higher depth creating a larger sort of feeling, and lower depth becoming increasingly flat, if you will. Finally, we have 4 modulation modes, with an intensity slider controlling the degree to which it's applied, adding extra sheen and polish to the resulting reverberations. I'll just bring the wet mix up a little bit, try and emphasize the modulation a little more, and you might want to listen to headphones for a better view of this. Now we've got the frequency spectrum on the vertical axis, and we can widen or shorten the time domain. So I've shortened it down to a 1 second duration. And the way that both RC24 and 48 control the time response is by giving me a base time in seconds and a mid time in seconds, with a crossover, the dial there, determining frequencies below which are controlled by the bass length and above which are controlled by the mid reverb decay length. So you notice as I increase the bass tail, we have stronger frequencies appearing below 800 Hertz in the spectrum, and a high cut just removes unnecessary high frequencies at the end. Now, of course, I can switch to a B mode to make slight adjustments and A-B between them. In this case, I'll bring the bass frequency down a little bit to enrich some of the mid reverb length there. And I'll check out this bass sound here. If I go to the MFA bass, there's no device on there, but I've already put a RC24 on send A, so I'll just send that. And I just want to give this sort of bouncy analog acid bass a little spatialization. So I don't want a lot of low end muddying it up, so I'll bring the bass length all the way down. And yeah, I do want some modulation on there and pretty short in the mid range. I'll keep the room reverb, and you'll notice I have it set to wet because it's on a return. I don't want any dry bleeding through for gain staging purposes. So here we have the RC48, which is specifically for bigger reverbs with 2 different hall algorithms, hall and random hall. And it allows not only for larger reverb spaces, larger perceived acoustic spaces, but also for more special ambient effects and things of that nature. So you'll recognize this real-time spectrum display from before, the same bass mid crossover decay time system as RC24. And I want a nice length on the mid. And I'm going to open up the high cut and reduce the damping a little bit. Now on the left, the three sliders are different from RC24. I've got a pre-delay, which is similar, and the further the pre-delay is, the further the perceived slapback of the room edges might be. I've also got the room shape and size, and in the reverb mode, the spread and diffusion are tied to the reverb shape and size, but I want to leave it in effect mode, where the diffusion and spread work independently so I can create more interesting effects. Now this pre-echoes tab is only available in RC48, and it gives me up to 6 echoes that I can independently adjust the level and delay time of, and these are processed independently of the reverb. So it's going to add a little extra texture, some extra slap back. So now if I go to Random Hall, you'll notice we have 3 additional parameters that appear in the options pane. Spin, wander, and shelf. The shelf boosts the high end a little bit, and the spin and wander are meant to emulate the randomization of people moving around in an actual acoustic space. And in the Random Hall mode, bringing the mid slider all the way to the top gives me an infinite reverb hold. It gives me a frozen reverb sound. Quantization noise, again, same as the RC24, designed to be more faithful to the digital artifacts generated by the reverb units these are modeled after, and the real-time analysis display I might want to disable if I'm running a lot of plugins and starting to hit some CPU issues. So I'll just add some RC24 to the bleeps via send A and increase the send B amount maybe. Now in this case, send B is pretty loud. I might want to bring the RC48 output volume down a little bit. But that's a quick look at RC24 and RC48. Of course, both come with a pretty serious complement of very well programmed presets. Certainly worth exploring. They're both quite versatile and sound amazing. RC24, of course, is the one you want to use for any room reverbs, but if you're looking for bigger or more experimental ambience and atmospheres, RC48 is probably the way to go. 2 excellent reverb plugins included with the latest version of KOMPLETE.